Circling back to one of the things that we discussed earlier, our rural projects. And so, Anu, this question is for you. There's a lot of dialogue going around where some regional centers state, hey, rural is middle of nowhere and, there's nothing there. And so why would you invest in that? So could you shed some light on what actually a rural TEA is? And is it absolutely middle of nowhere where nothing exists, in like middle of a desert or something?
No, so it doesn't have to be in like a town where you just don't see anyone except for 5 people. That's not what it is. But I do agree with you. That seems to be the concern for a lot of my investors who are coming in and saying, hey, I want to go into a rural project, but how are you going to find 10 people to work in a project in the middle of nowhere? So a rural project is basically defined as something that's outside of a large city, outside of something called a metropolitan statistical area. So I believe the population has to be at least 20,000. And so that's basically what it is. It's an MSA outside of the metropolitan area, and it tends to be under 20,000 of your population in that specific town.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Yeah, I mean, it's as Anu mentioned, right? So it's a population that has less than 20,000 people and it's outside of a major metropolitan statistical area. There are a lot of those out there, and what investors are clamoring for are projects that are in rural because of the priority processing. What I always advise clients is, certainly balance the visa element, right? So you want priority processing, you want to avoid a potential backlog, consider where you are and whether you can apply for adjustment of status, and then also consider the strength of the project. So it's a multifaceted element as to what you'll be looking at when you're narrowing down what project option. In my experience, most investors typically will look at probably 5 or 6 different projects before they make a decision. And that's going to be a evaluation of several different factors. So rural is good, and there are a number of very good rural projects out there. And I know Golden Gate Global has a great one that it's currently now bringing to the market. And there are also a number of other non-rural projects that are urban. And so investors really need to consider the factors before they just jump in blindly. And that's an important element.
So last question before we get into the source of funds aspect of EB-5, and this is to all 3 of you, starting with Anu. What is the trend you're looking at when you look at Indian and Chinese and Vietnamese investors, or in general, any investors? Are they filing more urban applications or are they filing more rural applications?
So it's kind of what Rohit had just said. It really depends. I prefer to balance everything. So are they more comfortable with the specific project because they know the regional center? The regional center has a fantastic name. And if that regional center also happens to have a rural project, spectacular. Then both of their kind of factors align and they can go with that. But I have some investors that come in and say, I only want a project in a rural area, but not only a rural area, but a very specific rural area that's right outside my city and I can drive to and watch it being built. Mm-hmm. You're going to kind of put yourself in a box if you narrow it kind of that much. But I tend to find most of my clients care a lot about how long the regional center has been active, especially with the processing times currently. They want to go with a regional center that has been in the market for quite some time. And then there's a comfort level, because if they've been in the market and they're going to continue being in the market, then they are going to really care about the investor and make sure that the investors are getting their green card and being able to get their money back. So that is the number one priority for my investors, is the name and the reputation of the regional center. The second factor is going to be, all right, especially my Chinese, Vietnamese, Indian investors, they're looking at the rural projects. especially the ones who have aging out children who are maybe 18, 19, 20, they want to have their case go through the priority processing. And I am seeing that as one of the factors, but it's usually the secondary factor to making sure that the investment is secure and they have a comfort level with the regional center. In terms of putting kind of percentages on it, it's something that we actually just looked at the firm about a week and a half ago. And most of my Chinese investors who are outside of the United States, they care less about where they're going. So as long as it's in a TEA or rural project or high unemployment, they really don't care. The ones in the United States prefer rural projects. And we had same thing for Indian nationals and Vietnamese nationals. If you're overseas, they care less. They just want to make sure it's either high unemployment or rural. If they're in the US, they're looking and they prefer rural projects over anything else.
Great. Thanks for that. Nima, what's been your experience? Chinese, Indian investors, what's the breakdown, rural versus urban for you?
Yeah, I think, we have the opposite experience. Most of our Chinese investors that are familiar with EB-5, new Chinese clients that are familiar with EB-5 and the 2015 priority date, as well as the Indian nationals and the 2017 Chart A priority date. So for our clients that are outside of the United States, they're 100% rural. For our clients in the United States that are able to file concurrently and get the EAD and the AP, then they've leaned more heavily high unemployment. I think my guidance is similar to both of my panelists, but we work a little bit differently than the other law firms. We won't work with any project or any investor. We keep our circle really small, trying to only work with projects that are near fully financed, under construction, job creation. So we know that the investors we represent, we have eliminated immigration risk. They can set their focus on investment risk and then processing times. We want to remove all doubt of approval of the applications, not just the EB-5 and the green card, but also the A-29 that we're filing down the road. What we tell the investors are, it's a pretty simple analysis to say rural is twice the visa, so it's going to be faster, especially when you can't account for how many people outside of the United States are filing rural. I think with the demand, we're still early enough in the timeline that the processing time between the two is going to be negligible. You should lead as a financial investment decision. And if your due diligence and your underwriting leads you to rural, great. If it doesn't, I don't know if you should force yourself towards rural because you may get the green card 6 months faster. I think the other element that the investors are not necessarily realizing is until we get the updated rulemaking for USCIS, you are not being paid back until you file your A-29. Even if we do get updated rulemaking in 2024, if you've invested in 2022 or 2023, you have an investment contract that probably says you are eligible for repayment once you file the A-29, and we've achieved some sort of threshold in the project of 5 to 7 years. So if you're not getting paid back in year 7, is it that important that you got your green card 6 months faster? So if you've done your underwriting and it leads you to a rural project, great, let's go, let's run. If you've done your underwriting and it leads you to a high unemployment, then I wouldn't be so concerned if there's a slight delay.
Noted. Thanks, Nima. Rohit, what's been your experience with your investors? Are they doing more rural, urban? What's the motivating factor?
So I think somewhat similar, both what Anu and Nima mentioned. Those who are here in the United States, they tend, and here on a non-immigrant basis, and we can file for adjustment, they tend to be a little bit more agnostic on that standpoint and are focused purely on the governing question about project viability and the financials. Those who are abroad and will have to go through consulate process and are not looking to come here for a while, and particularly subject to retrogression, they are heavily focused more so on the rural. The way my practice sits, I wear both hats, corporate security as well as the immigration. So it's a little hard for me just to say, look, So I do get involved in a certain degree. I will never give an investment advice. I'm not a broker dealer. I'm not an investment advisor, but at least I'll give them some level of guidance on things and thresholds to consider. So it's been somewhat evenly divided, but I think if I look backwards over the last several petitions that we filed, majority of the rural ones that we have filed all are abroad. We're not seeing as many who are here in the US.
Thanks, Rohit.